in the viewpoint of a professional filmmaker, what is it that you love about film and what makes a good storyteller?
In terms of it as a format, it pulls together so many different elements. So if you're a musician, you're pulling together sound and feeling. If you are a filmmaker, that's an element of it, but then you've got the visual of it. So if you're a photographer, then you're looking for light and meaning and things like that. Whereas we're pulling together these things together. So to be a great filmmaker, you've got to think about this entire spectrum. What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it look like? How does this invoke a reaction to somebody and things like that? You've almost got to grapple with it a little bit. And so for me, it's people who can understand the aesthetics of each of those elements. So somebody who understands it, how to describe a sound, like and what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Same with like the composition's a great one. It's something we've been working on internally, where it's kind of like when you film people, like how you portray them in the frame tells you whether they should be powerful, whether they're not, whether they're at ease or not, and things like this. And it's like kind of how you want the audience to feel. So we're trying to do a lot of work on, well, how do we get something that's quite neutral but also very powerful? So you're always dealing with these often polar opposites, but you've got to find that bit in the middle where you go, if it's a documentary, say, we want it to be like relaxed and informative, but at the same time we've got to get it so that it has a feeling to it, that it is interesting as an image. It's not just like, oh well, we could, otherwise we might as well just come down with a handy cam and just stick it in someone's face.
Because I think that it's also doing that to a client brief, which is also subjective. It's a very difficult task. So in terms of your kind of favorite filmmakers, who do you kind of look up to and almost why? Because I watch movies, I like storytelling, but you'll see it in a completely different way to how I do. So almost for someone that's uninitiated, what makes Stanley Kubrick good, or whoever? Because I know that your different sound booths or editing booths have got different names as well. And it was just, I'd love to hear your viewpoint on, what makes a great filmmaker and why.
Yeah, the guys I look up to really are, and it's interesting at this stage of my life because it's not really changed, which is Stanley Kubrick and Christopher Nolan, which is, the big filmmakers. Yes, I'd love to list off a bunch of names that no one's ever heard of and all that type of thing. And there is other stuff that I watch, but those two do it for me because you're dealing with a lot of different and opposing pressures to get the thing made anyway. So the fact that when you delve into Stanley Kubrick's archives, you look at why he's filmed here instead of there and the commercial decisions that drive that. He wasn't given a blank check to make 2001. He had to work within budgets and the rest of it and to make money for him and the studio and for the people involved in it and things like that. So it's quite interesting. And especially like Chris Nolan's got his own company, Syncope. So it's kind of like, it's looking at how the thing that I think is interesting for them, which I don't do, is that they would be directing on set. They've done all of this stuff to be able to do that. Whereas I'm doing all of this stuff and I'm having to then step back and let other people do it and I'll do more of this stuff, which is really interesting. But the interesting bit of that is that my fingerprints are still all over it. But in terms of, the variety, you look at Nolan's films, you've got Outer Space, you've got, what was it? How would you describe Inception? Kind of like, like Dream Within a Dream.
Yeah.
Like
got the whole Dark Knight series.
Yeah, like, and even them, and then Memento with the narrative, and even something as straightforward as Dunkirk, where it's this whole playing with time within a historical setting. It's really fascinating to look at the variety of these films, and then Tenet that's coming out, where it's kind of like, God, actually, I shouldn't have mentioned that because I'm looking myself really daft now. It's not time travel. It's like inversion, I think.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but
It comes out next month, and it's I've seen the trailers and it looks phenomenal, but it's like I have no idea what it is, and
Okay.
that's the best thing about films, when you don't know what you're going into. And then the same with Kubrick, where you go through Lolita, through Doctor Strangelove, right into Full Metal Jacket and Eyes Wide Shut, and everything in between. You go, it's not just, and that's something that I've really been inspired by. We don't just make engineering films. We don't just work with heavy engineering. We don't just work with financial services. We work with such a wide scope of, and it's being able to tell the story, whichever one you land in on that day. That's the real skill of a filmmaker, and it's something that I think the Tees Valley's got a lot to do, a lot of work to do on, where it's not just about making something great once, it's about being able to do it tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that.